By the following Saturday, the HOA had turned Karen's theft into an event. Bright flyers lined the subdivision bulletin boards announcing Community Improvement Day, complete with potluck sign-ups and a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new water feature. I watched from my truck parked along the public road, equal parts amused and amazed by how confidently wrong they were. Karen stood front and center, clipboard in hand, barking cheerful instructions. Volunteers hauled bags of gravel, potted plants, and solar lights toward my former tank. Someone had even tied blue ribbons around it, as if that somehow transformed stolen property into a civic asset. I walked up slowly, hands in my pockets. "Good turnout," I said. Karen barely glanced at me. "Of course it is. People appreciate leadership." A neighbor I vaguely recognized leaned over. "This is going to collect rainwater for the garden beds," he said proudly. "Very eco-friendly." I nodded. That's one word for it. They hadn't opened the tank yet. That part surprised me. Apparently the plan was to unveil it ceremonially, then connect a spigot later. Karen tapped her watch, cleared her throat, and clapped her hands for attention. "Before we begin," she announced, "I want to thank everyone for helping improve our community aesthetics. Some people," she glanced directly at me, "don't understand shared responsibility." A few people murmured. One woman frowned at me like I'd personally offended her begonias. Karen reached for a large decorative wrench. "Let's see what a difference teamwork makes." I cleared my throat. "Karen, one last time. That tank was part of a septic system project." She froze, then laughed loudly. "Oh, please, you already tried that." "It's documented," I said. "Permits, invoices, the works." She waved me off. "Fear tactics won't stop progress." With a flourish, she twisted the top valve. There was a pause, just long enough for smiles to hold and cameras to stay raised. Then came a sound that didn't match anyone's expectations. Not water, not air, just a dull, ominous gurgle. The crowd went quiet. Someone wrinkled their nose. Another person stepped back. Karen's smile faltered. "That's normal. Just pressure." The smell arrived next, not overpowering, but unmistakable. Confusion spread faster than panic. Phones lowered. Whispers started. "What is that?" someone asked. Karen tightened the valve again, face flushing. "It's probably residue. These things are used in all kinds of ways." I leaned closer, keeping my voice low. "That residue is exactly why it was sealed and scheduled for professional disposal." Her eyes flicked toward me, suddenly uncertain. A man from the garden committee gagged dramatically and backed away. "I'm not touching that." Another neighbor said, "Didn't you say this was clean?" Karen snapped, "It was supposed to be." I shrugged. It was never empty, just contained. Silence fell over the group as the reality settled in. This wasn't an eco-project. It was a very expensive, very smelly mistake. Karen straightened her shoulders. "This meeting is adjourned," she said sharply. "Everyone go home." No one argued. I turned back toward my truck, finally satisfied. By Monday morning, the subdivision Facebook group was on fire. I didn't even need an account to see the screenshots neighbors were texting me. Posts about unusual odors, possible contamination, and miscommunication regarding HOA projects filled the page. Karen, meanwhile, was in full crisis management mode. Her first move was denial. According to her official HOA email blast, the tank was described as a previously misrepresented container, and the smell was blamed on organic buildup caused by improper sealing. She emphasized 3 times that no sewage had ever been involved. Anyone suggesting otherwise, she wrote, was spreading harmful rumors. Unfortunately for her, reality doesn't care about email formatting. The county inspector showed up that afternoon. I happened to be fixing a gate when a white truck rolled past my property and headed straight into the subdivision. I followed at a distance, curiosity getting the better of me. By the time I arrived, a small crowd had already gathered near the community garden. Karen stood rigid beside the tank, talking rapidly, hands flying as if enthusiasm alone could rewrite physics. The inspector listened, nodded once, then asked to see the permits. Karen's confidence visibly cracked. "Well, We didn't think we needed permits. It's just a water tank. The inspector pointed at the faded industrial markings still visible beneath the beige paint. This is a regulated waste container. Silence. Someone in the crowd muttered, I knew it smelled wrong. The inspector ordered the area cleared immediately. Yellow tape went up. The garden beds, weeks from planting, were declared off limits until testing could be completed. Keran tried to argue, citing HOA authority and community approval, but none of that mattered now. Then came the invoice. Professional hazardous waste removal isn't cheap, especially when it involves unauthorized transport and public exposure risk. The inspector explained the fines calmly, like he was reading a grocery list. Keran's face drained of color with every sentence. She turned to the crowd. This is a shared responsibility, she said weakly. The HOA acted on behalf of the community. A woman crossed her arms. You acted without asking, a man added. You ignored warnings. Someone else said, you stole it. That word hung in the air. Keran looked at me then, eyes sharp and desperate. You should have stopped us. I tried, I said evenly. Twice, in writing. That evening, a second HOA email went out, this time announcing an emergency meeting and a temporary special assessment. Translation, everyone was about to pay for Keran's mistake. The comments exploded. By the next day, resignation rumors were circulating. Neighbors demanded copies of the original emails I'd sent. Screenshots spread. Timelines were pieced together. Keran's version of events unraveled fast once facts entered the conversation. I watched it all from my porch, coffee in hand, listening to the wind roll across the pasture. The tank would be removed by the end of the week, properly and legally, just like I'd planned from the start. But Keran's problem wasn't the tank anymore. It was accountability. The emergency HOA meeting was standing room only. Neighbors who usually ignored community business showed up early, arms folded, expressions tight. The room buzzed with frustration before Keran even stepped to the front. When she did, the usual confidence was gone. Her smile looked practiced, brittle. She opened with procedure, agenda items, voting rules, reminders about civility. No one was having it. A hand shot up. Why did you take something from private property without permission? Another voice followed. Why did you ignore written warnings? Someone else asked the question everyone was thinking. Why are we paying for this? Keran tried to reframe it as a misunderstanding, a well-intentioned beautification effort that had unexpected complications. But then the HOA treasurer spoke up, holding a stack of papers. These are the emails, he said, and the county report and the invoice. The numbers landed hard. Fines, removal costs, environmental testing, legal consultation. The room went quiet as people did the math in their heads. A motion was made to suspend Keran pending a vote. It passed almost instantly. She protested, voice rising, accusing people of betrayal and lack of gratitude. But the narrative had shifted. This wasn't about aesthetics or leadership anymore. It was about overreach. When the vote for removal came, it wasn't even close. Keran gathered her things in silence, eyes fixed on the floor as neighbors avoided looking at her. No one clapped. No one spoke. Authority, once taken for granted, evaporated in a single evening. The tank was removed 2 days later by a licensed crew in hazmat gear. They worked efficiently, professionally, exactly as I'd planned from the beginning. The concrete pad was power washed, the soil was treated. Life in the subdivision slowly returned to normal, minus one president and plus a healthy dose of caution. A week later, I received a letter, a formal apology from the HOA, acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and confirmation that all fines and costs would be covered by their insurance, not by a special assessment. They also included a promise, no future actions involving neighboring properties without written consent. I pinned it to the corkboard in the barn. Out on the ranch, things stayed the same. Fences still needed mending, cattle still needed water. The wind still carried the smell of sage and dust, not bureaucracy. But every now and then I'd see a neighbor slow down at the edge of the property, glance toward the barn, and think twice before assuming they knew better. Keran moved shortly after. Last I heard, she was telling people the story very differently. But But facts have a way of sticking. You can repaint a tank. You can rename a mistake. You can even convince yourself you're right. But you can't steal what you don't understand and expect it not to come back on you. The ranch had been quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that made you think nothing could possibly go wrong. I was repairing a fence near the west pasture when I noticed tire tracks cutting through the dirt road, fresh and deliberate. That alone was strange. Out here, people didn't just wander onto private land by accident. Then I saw the empty concrete pad by the barn and felt my stomach drop. My ranch water tank was gone. This wasn't just any tank. It was a massive industrial-grade container that sat behind the barn, clearly labeled, bolted down, and very much not abandoned. I used it for temporary storage during a septic upgrade, and it was scheduled for proper removal later that month. Anyone with common sense or basic reading skills would have known it wasn't a free decoration. I leaned on the fence and stared at the empty space, replaying the last few days in my head. That's when I remembered the email from the HOA president, the woman everyone quietly referred to as Keran. She had complained, again, about my unsightly rural equipment being visible from the edge of the subdivision. I'd ignored it, just like the previous dozen messages. Now the tank was gone. I drove down to the subdivision entrance, past manicured lawns and identical mailboxes, until I spotted it. There it was, sitting proudly at the corner of the community garden, painted beige and surrounded by decorative rocks. A little wooden sign read, "Future Rainwater Collection Feature." I parked, stepped out, and couldn't help laughing. Keran stood nearby, arms crossed, surveying her work like a general inspecting troops. She smiled tightly when she saw me. "I knew you'd notice," she said. "The HOA took care of that eyesore for you. You're welcome." I told her calmly that she had taken private property from my land without permission. She waved a hand dismissively and launched into a speech about community standards, shared viewsheds, and her authority as HOA president. A small crowd of curious neighbors gathered, nodding along. "What you stole," I said, keeping my voice steady, "was not a rainwater tank." Keran scoffed. "It's a tank. It's empty. We checked." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you?" She rolled her eyes, clearly confident. "Look, if you wanted it, you should have maintained it better. Now it's going to benefit the community." I looked at the beige-painted tank, sealed tight, and felt a slow grin spread across my face. They had no idea what they'd just installed at the heart of their perfect little neighborhood. Then I said, "I suggest you don't open it." Keran laughed. I didn't. Enjoying this wild ranch versus HOA story? Hit that subscribe button to catch more unbelievable real-life tales. Give this a like if it made you laugh or cringe, and drop a comment below. What would you have done if Keran stole your tank?